2022 or Death Holler brought us Season 3, Slash or Pass. It became the classic horror film podcast of its time. And now Death Holler brings us the most shocking season ever. Season 4, Dead or Dead.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Imagine, if you will, that one of the hosts is absolutely terrified of zombies.
So, what's the plan? Bash him in the head, that seems to work out.
Now, accept the fact there is no escaping this horror. Death Holler brings back the dead. Remember, when you're in Death Holler, listener discretion is advised. With hospitality like this, you'll never want to leave. We hope you stay alive.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Death Holler. I'm your host, the Reverend Dr. Death, and there's no more room in hell because joining me is my undead co-host, Llareyna. How's the zombie apocalypse treating you so far, Llareyna?
Honestly, I feel like it's duck season, and I'm just a sitting duck in a pond, just waiting. I know it's going to happen. I'm going to get caught up, and I don't like it. I don't like the way it feels.
Malls and zombies. It sounds absolutely ridiculous on paper, but somehow George Romero spun the commentary on American materialism into genre gold. Using the zombie-like obsession people had with large indoor malls, Romero made what is considered one of the greatest zombie movies of all time. So grab your pie tins, stock up on ammo and Spam, and get down with the sickness as we review Dawn of the Dead 1978 and its 2004 remake. But first, if you're enjoying the podcast, we would appreciate it if you would take the time to like, comment, subscribe on whatever podcast platform you prefer. It helps us get more visibility on podcast listings and helps us grow. Also, consider following us on social media. You can find us on TikTok and Twitter under Death Holler Pod, and we can be found on Instagram and Facebook under Death Holler Podcast. We appreciate everyone who listens and hope you enjoy the show. Let's attack some bees.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that? What is it? Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah! Open my eyes!
I almost said that during this movie. Biozombie from 1998, directed by Wilson Yip, written by Matt Chow, Man Sing So, and Wilson Yip. Principal players, we got Jordan Chan playing Woody Invincible, the bootleg movie seller / slacker. Sam Lee's playing Zombie, that's Zombee, the birthday boy and the best friend of Woody. He's also a slacker. Emotion Chung plays Loy, the glasses-wearing sushi maker and a complete and total simp, even as a zombie, he's a simp, which is saying something. Angela Ying Tong plays Rolls, the pretty beauty shop worker.
Rolls.
Yeah, Rolls. Suk Yin Lei plays Jelly, the Rolls BFF and the beauty store worker as well. Yu Chung Lai plays Kui, the abusive husband and pawn shop owner in the movie. Dorothy Melendrez plays Mrs. Kui, the hot but abused wife. And then finally, Frankie Chi Lung Chan plays Ox, the mall cop, and a beefy boy. for a Hong Kong Chinese man, he's pretty big. That's all I got to say for him. He doesn't have that small body that you usually associate with Chinese folk.
Yeah.
Synopsis taken straight from IMDb because it's pretty much sums this up is a group of young shoppers and employees must band together when a zombie outbreak overruns their Hong Kong shopping center in the middle of the shopping day. Also, somebody pointed this out, and I have to agree with them. It's basically Mallrats with zombies. So the gist of this movie is that these people working like this, and it's really weird looking. I mean, I guess this is how according to the director, this is how all the Hong Kong's like shopping centers used to look. But like just this very, I mean, there's like glass storefronts everywhere. Like there's no actual like anything but glass and mirrors throughout the entire place. And these people like work in these little small cubby holes type stores or whatever, doing like hawking different things. The main two characters basically go to movie theaters and hand record the movies and then sell burnt video disc of them. The beauty store workers are basically trying to get people conned into, paying like for this big expensive beauty, like coupon package. And then the one guy works at Four Eyes, as they call him, works as the sushi restaurant that they have inside of it. And then the other guy basically runs like a little small pawn shop where they sell like bootleg phones and that sort of thing. But anyways,
sushi? And this is in Hong Kong?
Yeah.
Don't the Chinese hate the Japanese?
They do, but apparently they love their food because they pointed out, they're like, they point out it's Japanese food, but they love sushi. So there you go.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But they, there's another scene where the two guys are called by their boss, whoever that is. It's assumed that he's like some kind of mob type guy. And he tells them that they have to go pick up his car. In the middle of picking up the car, they happen to run over this guy who has just got through conducting this deal with some Afghani, well, I wouldn't say soldiers, but they're like bioweapons, like salesmen or something. And basically the gist of it is that they have invented a biological warfare agent, basically creates zombies that they have put into an energy drink. And that's their, and so they go to show how effective it is, and the zombie that they brought to show the effectiveness of it basically breaks loose and kills everybody. But the one guy, he runs out in the street, gets hit by these guys. They put him in the trunk because they're goofball idiots. And they think at one point in time, whenever he's dying, he says something about the energy drink. They think, oh, it's the laying right there in the road, and they feed it to him, which basically makes him a zombie. And then he goes and he turns everybody in the shopping mall into one. And it kind of plays out like Anne in the Apocalypse in the sense that it's really goofy, and it's more like about the relationships between the people for most of the movie. Even whenever the zombies first pop up, they're not very effective, but then more and more people start turning into zombies. And then at the end of it, basically everybody's getting ripped apart. So and the guy who wrote it, Wilson Yip, he says that this is his loving homage to Dawn of the Dead from 1978, which is the movie that got him into making movies, basically.
It doesn't sound terrible, and I'm looking at the photos, and I have 100% seen worse zombies.
Oh, the zombies are not bad at all. The only thing that's weird about it, and it was really hard to take, was that he goes for these gonzo like camera angles and like quick cuts a lot. And if you're one of those people, and I'm normally not, like I can stand like found footage movies. Some people have real bad motion sickness with those. This movie almost gave me motion sickness. Like there was a couple times I'm like, dude, like my eyes can't focus. Stop this. Yeah. He does that to like interject a lot of frenetic energy into the shot, and it works. But man, is it hell to have to try to watch. I mean, whenever he's doing it constantly. Yeah. I do like one of the things about it though, because it's set in that mall and the way they've got their mall set up, there's neon colors all throughout. So it's got a real like 90s, like pink neon color thing, color scheme going on throughout most of the movie, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
This was on the cover of the Vinegar Syndrome disc that I got in, but there's one scene where they stick like a metal pipe through the back of one of the zombies' heads, and they twist one of the valves at the end of it, and the blood from his brain drains out the back of the pipe.
Ew.
It's a neat little scene.
No.
But it's not terrible. I mean, the humor, it's not my type of humor, but I mean, the characters are not. I mean, it kind of reminded me a little bit of that movie, and I'm blanking on the name of it that we reviewed back at Christmas time, where is it Stalled? Was that the name of it? Where he's in a bathroom stall?
Uh-huh.
It kind of reminds me of the humor a little bit in that movie. It's just kind of, goofy and out there.
Yeah.
But the zombies are way better in this than they were installed. I'll give them that.
Yeah. I mean, again, not terrible installed, but yeah, they look pretty good. It's like that's where they put their focus on in this film. And I would say good job.
The Nick Cage rating would be Teen Titans Go to the Movies, because between the ADHD whirlwind of quick cuts, odd camera angles, freehand camera work, and gonzo color scheme, it's kind of like that movie, because if you watch Teen Titans Go to the Movies, it's like every 2 seconds to make some kind of pop culture reference, they're like cutting to something else. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
Was that an animated film?
It was.
Okay. I love Teen Titans.
Yeah, Nick Cage was the voice of Superman in that, apparently, which
okay.
I did not realize. But anyways, it's an interesting movie, and you can definitely see where Dawn of the Dead inspired it. So, but speaking of that, Dawn of the Dead from 1978, tagline: "When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth."
For this season, there's no better tagline. There's no way. There's no way there's going to be another tagline that beats that.
I don't know that there's another tagline in any movie that beats that. I mean, that gets you invested in the movie. It really does.
Yeah, it's super scary. It's probably not probably true, but like if you're religious, that's going to fucking really get you. And it makes sense, I guess, from a religious perspective of how this shit happens, because rarely do we get an explanation of what happens with the zombie apocalypse. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, was there some kind of explanation in this film? I thought I heard something.
They give no explanation.
Okay.
The only one that comes up is when Peter, Ken Voorhees character, mentions that he was his Haitian granddad or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Basically said that came up with the idea that the zombies would walk on the earth whenever there was no more room for their souls in hell, and that's the extent. Like, that's the only explanation you get.
Yeah.
Directed and written by George A. Romero, music by Dario Argento and Goblin. Made for a budget of $640,000 US. It made $66 million.
That's huge in terms of budget and box office for the 70s.
Yeah,
that's
huge. Yeah. This is the zombie movie that actually turned a huge profit for George. Of course, he lost all the money on Night of the Living Dead, and then Day, which I think, and George even admitted later, that is the superior movie. It is so dark and so bleak that most audiences were like, "Fuck that movie," and it didn't do too well.
Because of Day?
Day did, yeah.
Yes, I mean, which you and Noah did warn me that it's bleak. Like, you're like, it's dark.
It's basically George was in a bad mood with the world at the time that he made that or wrote that, and you can tell, like, there's no hope, really. There is toward the end of it, but for most of it, not.
Well, we'll get to it when we discuss the ending of this film, but do go on.
It came close in this.
Okay.
It really did. Principal players, we got Galen Ross playing Francine, the former news station worker, pregnant survivor, and the girlfriend of Flyboy in the movie.
Kind of useless, but kind of not.
This is in the trivia, but the actress, Galen Ross, did specifically tell George that she gave him some things whenever she was hired. She told him, she said, "I will not be screaming because I don't want her to seem weak," and she doesn't. She said, I want her to be more proactive, obviously, than
Yeah.
Barbara was.
Barbara, yeah.
And I want her to seem like she can hold her own. And George capitulated, and she is a stronger female protagonist than he had previously.
Stronger, but that's a loaded word.
We have Ken Foree playing Peter, the SWAT agent, badass, and Haitian descendant. He is the pivotal character in the movie, I would say. He's the one that you focus your attention on the most.
Yeah.
Halloween 2007, he was in Lords of Salem, From Beyond, The Devil's Rejects.
Wow.
Dawn of the Dead from 2004.
What?
Yeah.
Wild.
The Dentist, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge, Death Spa, Night Riders. That's just listing the horror-based stuff
Yeah.
he's in. He's been in a ton of other stuff, but yeah, once he got into this movie, it was, I mean, everybody saw him, they're like, I want him in my horror movie. So that's what he's done. And then Tony Todd would kind of take his place later on as being, the African-American actor who was picked for all the horror movies after that.
Yeah.
David Emge plays Steven, the news helicopter pilot, flyboy, and a terrible shot. And I'm going to ruin this. He is probably the best fucking zombie in any fucking movie, period.
Oh, 100%. He was not made to be who he was in this film until he became a zombie. And I did want to say this when you're talking about horrible shot. Like, women have been known to be able to, like, control their heart rate and their breathing when handed a gun. Not saying that all women are amazing shots, but I was almost like, dude, give her the gun. I bet you she could fucking make the shot.
I've heard from the guys who do like the concealed carry, like you have to do the actual shooting test. That 9 times out of 10 women take to it quicker than guys do.
Yes,
they just do.
And that's I took to it super on my first lesson. Yeah, it was one of those. I think the comment I'll never forget was, well, if you could shoot lemons from this distance, you can shoot people. It's unnatural, folks. I don't know where that came from. I never practiced, so it's just
the biggest issue that the guy who taught ours said was that most women pick guns that are way too high of a caliber to start out with. And the recoil is too much for them, so guys can handle more recoil.
Yes,
but we're not as controlled of a shot for most part. There's exceptions, but
ladies, you really, as long as it's a bigger caliber than a BB, you can do some damage. You'll be fine. You don't have to go for the biggest gun there.
David was in Basket Case 2 and Hellmasters, a couple other movies he was in.
Hold on. What season would Basket Case go into? Creature?
I would say creature feature.
Yeah, okay.
Along with Malignant, which is, spoiler alert, basically Basket Case redone. Scott Reiniger plays Roger, the SWAT agent with PTSD, but he's got it in the bag. Don't worry about him until you have to worry about him. He was in Night Riders and then Dawn of the Dead from 2004, spoiler alert.
Okay, but who was he in 2004?
He was the general that talked right after the sheriff, played by Tom Savini. While they're watching TV, there's a general that's kind of talking, and that's Scott Reiniger.
Okay, got it.
Jesse Del Grey plays the old priest in the movie that's missing a leg. Man, he gets around quick on that one crutch that he's got. Like, I don't know how the guy does it. Richard France plays the scientist in the movie. I call him the pirate scientist with the crazy ideas. Basically, folks, since the zombies don't eat too much of the body when they do go to feed off of them, let's just hack off parts and feed them. That way we keep them pacified. I mean, that's the smartest solution.
No.
That's honestly what he argues in the movie.
I remember that. I'm just like, okay. Yeah, he's not entirely wrong, because if you remember a scene where they were all in, like, it was at, I think, the condos, and there was, like, this fenced area, and they were all just kind of sitting there happily eating their Kentucky Fried Human.
Yeah.
And so he is right. I think if you were going to do that, to pacify them long enough to be able to calmly shoot them.
Wait till day and you'll see if you take this through line about pacifying zombies with food, you'll see what happens as a result of that.
I don't want to play this season anymore.
Joe Pilato is the officer at the boat dock. Yes, this is the same Joe Pilato that's actually in Day. A lot of fans have a theory that it's the same character. It's all headcanon. It's headcanon, but the fact that he's a police officer in this, he could have easily been like National Guard Reserve and then end up being a military guy in the third movie. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. Randy Kovitz plays the officer at the boat dock who's just looking for some smokes. Everybody else lights up after they tell him that they don't have
That's
any.
hella funny. I was dying.
Paul Musser plays the plaid shirt zombie, the famous zombie that makes the cover for Dawn of the Dead from 1978 that everybody sees. Don't really know how the guy died, but he looks like he's got part of his face burnt, so somehow that happened. Maxine Lapidus plays the redheaded zombie outside JCPenney. I bring that up because there's so many people that comment how she's such a hot zombie. And she's only in it for like a split second.
What the hell? Okay, hold on. I don't see the plaid shirt zombie.
He was walking toward Peter whenever he was right after he got attacked by the two zombie kids.
Oh, okay, yeah. Those kids were fucking wild.
Yes.
Okay.
Mike Christopher plays the Hare Krishna zombie. That almost gets Fran.
Ugh.
Sharon Hill plays that weird zombie nurse that like walks around with bug eyes.
Yeah.
Like she's goofy. She's just a goofy zombie. I wished I knew who played the gun zombie in this. I couldn't find any reference to the actual actor, but God bless that man because he appreciates a good gun to the point that he won't even eat you. As long as you give him a good gun that he can swap out, he'll just keep swapping guns with you.
What the hell? That's how you pacify them.
Yeah, he's a real dead-blooded American. And then Jim Crut plays the helicopter zombie who needed just a tad off the top.
Shut up. That was so good.
And then Tom Savini is the motorcycle gang member who's the machete-wielding thug. I bring that up because Land of the Dead, surprisingly, there's a guy that looks just like him, played by Tom Savini, who has a machete, who's a zombie. Imagine that.
You know, Tom Savini
could
gets
be the
to
same one.
Yeah, he gets to do whatever the fuck he wants in these zombie movies. Like, you make a zombie movie and Tom Savini calls you and says, "Hey, I'm gonna roll up and this is what I'm gonna do." You don't fucking tell him no.
We'll get into it. He hurt himself several times doing his own stunts because he kept telling George, he's like, "I could do that," and George was like, "If you can do it," and he really couldn't do it, but he tried.
Hey, that's all that matters. Okay, he is a go-getter.
Synopsis. Following the events of Night of the Living Dead, society is unraveling at a greatly accelerated pace. Despite the successes of the rednecks out in the farmlands, the cities are falling into chaos, and the living are becoming outnumbered by the cannibalistic dead. A motley group of former SWAT team members and local news employees steal the news helicopter and head out for somewhere safer. Enraptured by the relative safety and material goods offered by a suburban mall, the survivors decide to clear out the area and make a place to bunker down. Eventually, a group of road warriors and thieves finds the honey hole and brings war to the cozy little capitalistic paradise. Fran is with child, Roger's going wild, and Flyboy is one of the best zombie depictions in film. Night of the Living Dead is over. Dawn of the Dead is here.
That's not bad.
Other taglines. George A. Romero's classic 1978 gore fest, Dawn of the Dead, is back.
Too long. Didn't read.
That had to have been like a later thing.
Yeah.
First, there was Night of the Living Dead. Now George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead.
He came up with these because he wanted his name out there.
Yeah. This time he wanted credit.
Yeah.
Too horrific to be advertised on television.
I mean, that's not bad. That's not the worst. That's not terrible because that's going to get my attention.
This one is too long, didn't read, but you
shit.
can tell that they were what they were going for. In 1968, George Romero brought us Night of the Living Dead. It became the classic horror film of its time. Now George Romero brings us the most intensely shocking motion picture experience for all time.
Jesus.
That almost sounds like our intro, to be honest.
Yeah, that's not a tagline. That's a commercial.
It is. Quotes from this movie. Peter, they're us, that's all. There's no more room in hell. And then Stephen's like, what? And then Peter's like, something my granddaddy used to tell us. You know, Macumba, voodoo. Granddad was a priest in Trinidad. Used to tell us when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
And that's it for quotes, because that is the only quote y'all need to hear.
That really is. I do like the fact that George linked his zombies back to voodoo zombies in this one.
Yeah, that's not terrible.
Dr. Foster, every dead body that is not exterminated becomes one of them. It gets up and kills. The people it kills get up and kill.
He's not wrong, and they were treating him like he was a fucking madman because everyone's like, no, like, don't kill the people. And it's like, yeah, they're not people anymore.
But yeah, they're too worried about trying to save their loved ones who are just gonna come in there and bite your neck and your arm.
Yeah.
By the way, that woman actually got her arm bit by that actor in that scene in the apartment building. I'll get to it in trivia.
Jesus.
But he bit over the area he was supposed to, and her scream in the movie is partially her real scream.
Oh shit! It looked like cake.
Francine Parker. What are they doing? Why did they come here? And then Stephen, some kind of instinct, memory of what they used to do. This was an important place in their lives.
Which
that's George's message straight to the audience.
Oh, it is. That's his message. But you know what? It brings up a good point now. Maybe not so much. I don't know. I have a dying mall in my area. And I'm like, God, I wonder if that would be a good, because they have the metal doors and everything you can roll down. And I'm like, God, maybe that would be a good place to hunker down. However, there's not very many places in the food court, and the shops are all shutting down. So there's really not a lot of goods and services now that I think about it, other than having a structure that's pretty sound. It's brick.
You know, a good place. I don't. Maybe not out in California because and they have limited what they can sell even here. But Walmart, they've got a gun section.
Oh yeah, they got a
They've
food
got
section.
groceries.
Yeah,
they've got a pharmacy. You're pretty well stocked up inside of a Walmart. Just saying.
Yeah, there's one, oh God, it is, if we had to walk, it's about a 15-minute walk. If we had to drive, it's about a 2 to 3 minute drive. So yeah.
But if people have memories of shopping at malls, or at least they did back in the day, you're going to get a ton of zombies going to Walmart because they look like fucking zombies right now.
Already, yeah, I was going to say, I think we already got zombies roaming our Walmart. So there is a Costco right next to my Walmart too.
Ooh, that'd be a good one.
Yeah, because there's insulin at that Costco. Well, there's insulin at the Walmart, but there's insulin at the Costco too.
Roger, why do these people keep them here? And then Peter, because they still believe there's respecting dying. Whenever he's talking about, whenever you was talking about in the basement where they've got them all there wrapped up and they've got them fed. That's a pretty good scene, actually.
It is, and they, as you can see, they are nice and calm, and they're content for a moment.
The old priest, I love this line. Many have died last week on these streets. In the basement of this building, you will find them. I have given them the last rites. Now you do what you will. You are stronger than us, but soon I think they be stronger than you. That's a very important line. When the dead walk, senors, we must stop the killing or lose the war. That's also an important line. That's foreshadowing. Because basically, if they took his advice, well, first of all, he's telling them, he's like, we might be able to kill them more now, but whenever they outnumber us, they're stronger. Also, we must stop the killing or lose the war. If they hadn't took the war to those bikers, they wouldn't. The casualties wouldn't have mounted up.
That's true.
And then this guy, Dr. Millard Rosh, the pirate scientist. The normal question, the first question is always, are these cannibals? No, they're not cannibals. Cannibalism, in the true sense of the word, implies an interspecies activity. These creatures cannot be considered human. They prey on humans. They do not prey on each other. That's the difference. They attack and they feed only on warm human flesh. Intelligence, seemingly little or no reasoning power. The basic skills remain and more remembered behaviors from normal life. There are reports of these creatures using tools, but even these actions are the most primitive. The use of external articles as bludgeons and so forth. I might point out to you that even animals will adopt the basic use of tools in this manner. These creatures are nothing but pure motorized instinct. We must not be lulled by the concept that these are our family members or our friends. They are not. They will not respond to such emotions.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong in anything he says in this. He is wrong about trying to feed them the pacify them, even though it would work. No, just don't do it. Peter, ain't it a crime? And then Stephen, what? And then Peter, the only person who can mess with this gun is the sucker with the bread to buy it. Talking about the gun in the gun shop. And he's not wrong about that either, because those most expensive guns are bought by rich assholes who don't even go out and shoot them. So, and then Roger, what do you think? Bag it or try for it? And then Peter, you game? And Roger's like, I need lighter fluid. And Peter's like, you got it. They go into the mall just so that he can get lighter fluid.
Yeah.
Roger, you take care of me when I go, won't you, Peter? And then Peter's like, just rest, man, save your strength. And Roger's like, I don't want to be walking around like that. Peter, he's like, I'm here, man. And Roger's like, don't do it until you're sure I am coming back. I'm going to try not to. I'm going to try not to come back. And then he just keeps repeating that.
Aww.
It's pretty rough scene between the two of them. Stephen, we're still pretty close to Johnstown. Those rednecks are probably enjoying this whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Yes, they were. And I was wondering, I mean, like, I get the mall situation. Like, they literally had everything they needed and then a ton of shit that they didn't. But I was like, fuck, those rednecks look like they had it under control.
Yeah. And it would have only been, I would say that the rednecks probably would have had it under control for months after that.
Oh, yeah.
Given how they were set up. The only thing that was going to, once the cities emptied out and became more dead and they started filtering into the rural areas, that's whenever the rednecks would have been at a disadvantage. But.
Yeah, but at the same time, these dead, they didn't know the rural area. Rural. There we go. I can word now. They didn't know those areas. That wasn't familiar to them. They were only flocking to areas that were familiar to them.
Well, that is true.
With a few scragglers, of course, but not much.
It's something that's never made any sense to me from George's perspective, and I think it's just because he was raised in a city, but he never goes back and addresses that. It's like, what happened to the people who just bunkered down in like the rural areas out in the boonies? Like there was less zombies there, and they were pretty good at like defending themselves, so they probably were well off.
Yeah,
I mean. And then Peter, right, and we're up here doing traffic reports. Wake up, sucker. We're thieves and we're bad guys. That's exactly what we are. We got to find our own way, which is a pretty good line whenever Steven's trying to say, hey, well, we're going to just roll up there like, we just didn't steal this helicopter, Roger over the radio while driving trucks. Hey, too tall, too slow, come back. And then Peter's like, you look my size when you're sitting in a truck. And then Roger comes back to him. What I want to know is, how did we get to be in the same force with you being so large and all? And then Peter responds back, well, they told me it was a midget force and they needed somebody to look up to.
Oh.
I love that.
What the hell?
And then finally, Peter, how much fuel do we have? And then Francine, not much. And Peter's like, all right. And that's how the movie ends. It's very ambiguous. Did they actually get anywhere?
The world may never know. I mean, I think I saw Peter later on as a priest on TV. So a pastor, maybe? I'm not sure.
It's in the trivia, but there was actually a debate between George and I want to say it was Tom, that the survivors in this and the survivors in Day both have kind of the same idea about flying out of a place and maybe going to islands. And what if they ran into each other? Did they, fight one another? Did they, join together to, make a go of it? It's an interesting thought. He doesn't really, it's not established anywhere, so it doesn't matter, but
yeah.
All right. Movie review. Visually, the zombies in this, there's some good effects, like plaid shirt zombie.
Oh,
the
yeah.
way that the effects on his burned skin are pretty decent. A lot of zombies in this movie are nothing but bluish gray makeup, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Savini said he was trying to imitate the gray, the black and white look from Night. And then when he saw how it looked on screen, how the skin tone would alternate between blue and green, he says he wished he would have done something else.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what? We're not going to complain. There's still some pretty cool effects.
The special effects of people getting bites and everything, top notch. That scene where the one guy busts down the door in the apartment and blows the one person's head off, like, it just explodes like a melon. That was the first time anything like that had been put on a movie, period.
This had to be the first time that kids got blasted.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But just think about that. You're in a movie theater. Tom Savini brings this up. You've never seen this before. Somebody's head explodes like a watermelon from a shotgun blast. Never in a fucking movie before. And you've seen it in the first 15 minutes. You're sitting there thinking, what the fuck are they going to do the rest of the movie? What is this,
That's one thing I will give this film is it did not fuck around. It got straight to the point. I cannot appreciate that anymore.
I'm going to go. I guess it plays in the visuals because I like how George zooms in on that red carpet that was actually part of that news agency or whatever. It was actually there. He didn't put that in there.
Yeah.
But that red carpet, that the way that it looks or whatever, and then just the scenes at the beginning of it where everybody is just running around frantically in that news place trying to Fran's is trying to rectify whether or not. Because they're just run all of the emergency, stations. And she's like, half of these are closed down. And they're like, just run them, And she closes it down. That whole scene, it sets you in the chaos, instantly. There's no, the only time you get any kind of safety and peace in this movie is once they're inside the mall and they've cleared it out. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
It's constant threat until that point. There's no other. There's just no rest for the characters until that point.
Yeah, and it to me it seemed, and they cleared it out just fine. I respect that, but fuck it, there was a lot of zombies in this mall.
There was a lot of zombies in the mall, and there was more and more of them outside the mall, and how risky it was. You're on edge whenever Peter and Roger are driving to get those trucks. Because something's going, and it does.
Apparently, Roger was not on edge as much as the rest of us.
George points that out. That's one of the reasons he hired Scott Reiniger, was because he wanted a macho, badass to play that character.
Yeah.
Scott Reiniger came in there and he played the part completely opposite to what George wanted. He played this calm, collected, guy, and George was like, that works because in the context of the movie, Roger, I guess it is, doesn't actually lose his cool until the mall, and that's whenever the PTSD catches up with him and he starts making all these errors that leads to his bites.
Fuck yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything else visually besides that. The blood, got to bring that up because it's a joke between Savini and George. Savini hates the blood in this movie. It's way too red and it's way too cartoony. George loves it because this is his homage to comic books, and he says it fits the comic book aesthetic of the movie. So
yeah, I guess so. If that's how you want to church it up, it just looked like red paint.
And to be honest, most paint or blood in movies at the time this made looked like that. You had to go out of your way to make a different variant of it because they got that straight from 3M as supposed to be movie blood, but it came out that color whenever they filmed it. So it's however you feel about it. The blood in Day does not look like that. I'll just say that much. But the zombies also look more realistic too. So
now, I thought a good chunk of the effects of people getting eaten were pretty decent. However, when you're, and I know you're going to talk about this in a little bit, the lady who got bit in the arm, immediately that to me looked terrible. Versus people getting like that one guy who got his stomach, bit open by a bunch of zombies. That looked pretty good. The guy that got his head fucking lopped off by the fucking helicopter.
The effect that they did in reverse that turns out really well, where the one zombie gets the machete to the head.
Yes,
that's a good effect. I agree with you. The bite in the apartment to me is not that good of an effect. I mean, that's saying something though. I mean, back then it was pretty good for what it was. But the one that you were talking about, where the guy getting his stomach ripped out, those were actually cow intestines that they were using for that scene. So it was real intestine. Yeah, they did good with that. It was pretty funny. And his arm is still fucking in the blood pressure machine. And Noah was like, he's like, you would think of as long as, he's like, they've survived pretty long at this point. He goes, and you think they know a thing or two. He's like, but they're over here just fucking around. Yeah, it's the weirdest thing because they've obviously lived that long through the apocalypse, just driving around, and all of them take too many risks when they're inside of that place. It's almost like I don't know if George meant this, but both groups have became too complacent with where they're at, and they think that they're above the zombies at that point, like nothing can hurt them. Yeah. And they basically fuck around and find out that both groups do, you know? Oh, yeah. Because Flyboy, surrounded by people with guns. Like, zombies are one thing. Oh, yeah. They'll get you. But you're surrounded by people with guns, and then you take a pot shot whenever you're not that good of a shot anyways. You're dumb. You're just fucking dumb at that point. Get your lady down here so she can start shooting people. I did feel bad for him, though, in the elevator. That scene always gets to me because you're just waiting. You know the zombie's going to break in on him, and he drops down to get, and it's just like, dude, your arm is hurt. You're not going to be able to climb back up there. Don't drop down. Yeah. I mean, and then he tries to climb back up, and then the zombies bite him, you know? I like how when he walks out of the elevator, immediately they're like, ugh. The one thing that I love about his portrayal, by the way, and this goes into the acting a little bit, skips ahead of the zombie, is that if you look, he's walking with one foot bent under. I don't even know how he did that, first of all. Like, one of his legs is bent, or feet is bent under him as he's sliding. But every bite, and this is how I've heard him talk about this before, he thought about, he's like, okay, with the damage that I took prior to my death, what would that make me end up being like as a zombie whenever rigor mortis kind of sets in? And you can see it. The bite on his neck makes his head at an angle. Yeah. The bite on his leg makes his leg like flop around. It's really stiff and doesn't move. It's like, I mean, he took every bit of that and worked it into how the zombie operates. Yeah, he was amazing as a zombie. He real stupid rookie mistakes. Well, I wouldn't even say rookie. None of us, they're just survivors at this point. So, you know, you can't even call it a rookie mistake. It's just a mistake. But it's like, you do realize they do everything in their power to protect, what's her name? Fran, because she's pregnant, she's a woman, whatever. But no one realizes that by leaving her alone constantly, if no one returns, she's fucked. Not because she doesn't have protection. She was probably okay where she was at for a while, you know, unless she got caught. But obviously she did good by learning how to fly the helicopter, but she's got to deliver a baby. Even if she knows how to fly a fucking helicopter, she's got a baby that she's going to have to deliver. Oh, that is a good point. Something weird about the movie, though, that they never bring up, just like how we talked about the dead body doesn't come back in Night of the Living Dead. Mm-hmm. She mysteriously goes from being super preggers to not at the end of the movie. Oh, it's almost like they forgot about it. It's not important. Semantics. But anyways, yeah, it been in one of those situations where she, like you said, if she'd been left by herself, she has got a lot of health things that are going on, and it's not smart to leave her by herself in that situation. But I mean, it being the time that it was, she's smoking and drinking through most of the pregnancy. So, I mean,
get rid of the baby.
Hey,
it's
Peter
not
going to
get rid of itself. Oh my God.
The story's a classic. I mean, it's hard to judge it because it set the standard for like most zombie movies. I mean, you know, it took everything in night, you know, the chaos of the zombies coming back, and then added in the mall thing. I mean, it's its own genre now. Zombies in a mall is kind of like a subgenre within like zombie movies.
I got a question. If you were in the situation, because the story, this is rolling into the story, because we're talking about going to a mall for not only protection but goods, everything you need. I mean, you're gonna need food, you're gonna need, you know, water, you're gonna need clothes, you're gonna need ammunition. This mall had it all, literally, which is impressive. But if you have a gun store of that size, are you gonna sit there and start picking off zombies? Because they didn't really.
I would have probably done what they do in the remake and
had a game,
shot at random zombies.
Yeah. Because I mean, I guess, you know, in a sense, you don't know how many more are just going to keep showing up, you know. But I feel like they had enough ammunition to, like, especially getting good at shooting them, that they're going to be able to get rid of a huge fleet of them.
Yeah, and the only issue would be is the more you kill of them, then they turn into straight rotting corpses, which increases like the smell and everything else.
I can live with that because you're living. Which Noah hated the fact that they stuck the corpses into the freezer where the food was. He's like, why are they sticking them where the food is? Yeah.
Why didn't they just throw them off the roof? That's only thing
what Noah said. Yeah.
But they do that in the remake, so I mean, you know, the only thing I can think of is that maybe I don't know, maybe they were trying to control the rot situation, but at a certain point, the zombies outside, even though they are decomposing slower, are still rotting. So I mean,
that is true.
I don't know.
Which brings up something in my book that I've been reading, which is The Burning World, which is it is not the sequel because I guess it is. It's a sequel to Warm Bodies. There's a prequel that is right before this book. So I went from Warm Bodies to the sequel without reading the prequel. Apparently I lost that. Not lost it, but I just didn't think about it and went straight to the one I'm at. And he has a quote in the book, and he said, a zombie, he goes, no matter how advanced or how young it was or how little the damage, is still a rotting corpse and is only good, you know, for an undetermined amount of time, but not an indefinite amount of time.
That's interesting. So him being able to, or them eating flesh didn't like slow the decomposition or anything in that book?
No. It was just something that they came to. Let me rephrase. I wouldn't say that it's slowing down the decay. It is satiating a hunger that's inside of them that they don't know what that hunger is.
Okay.
Remember how we discussed in Life After Beth how she was super, super horny, and you're like, I think she was filling in a void for a hunger, but it was a different kind of hunger she didn't know she had yet.
Yes.
That's not been addressed at all. So being horny is not a thing for the zombies in this book. However, there is a hunger that they have to satiate.
Okay.
So, yeah. Anyways, that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, he said it's still, at the end of the day, it's still a rotting corpse. And he does specify that there is no speed in that zombie world. So there is no fast zombie, no matter, like I said, how advanced or how good condition, they're not fast.
I mean, of course, he's the one that created zombies, technically.
Yeah,
Romero.
But
I tend to agree with his statement on that. If you're running, you're an infected human. If you're dead, rigor mortis is set in. You should be slow.
Yes, 100%.
And if you want to make and that's one of the things that bothers me about the remake. I get why they did the running zombies because it literally was in response to 28 Days Later. But those were rage-infected humans in that movie.
It was like mad cow's disease. They had a disease called the rage.
Yes. There was a reason they ran. The people in this movie and the Dawn remake are actually dead people.
Yes.
Like, I mean, for the most part. If you want to argue, I'll take the argument in that case. And I know we're kind of talking about the other one a little bit now,
No, you're
but
fine.
I would take the argument that if you said the freshly dead could run, okay.
Yeah.
But after weeks, like they've been in that mall for weeks, they should be shambling zombies by that point.
Well, doesn't rigor mortis set in after like 72 hours, if not sooner?
It's really quick. That's what I'm saying. If you wanted to say within the first day even that they could run, that would be fucking terrifying. And that'd be a zombie apocalypse nobody would actually live through, but assuming that you could live through one anyway. But they should slow down after that when the rot tends to creep in.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. The only thing about the story that a lot of people bring up as a critique, and I can't argue against this, is that when the motorcycle gang comes into the movie, it gets way too goofy.
It does. Noah said the same.
Pies, they've got all that stuff going on, and it's goofy as fuck. I mean,
yeah, they're doing a lot of useless shit. And they said something. One of the guys was like, "Hey guys, you're not taking for you. You're taking for us." Okay, so what are the gold rings for? What are the necklaces for?
What's the money for?
Yeah.
What does money mean in a world where there's no? I mean,
now I understand the money because eventually there's going to be a form of currency if you come across where you have to do some trading. Now, trading is better off of, hey, I have a doctor in the group, but I also have a carpenter.
Barters.
That's kind of thing. I do understand the money, though, because you never know when cash becomes the currency again if this thing gets under control. And even Peter was like, you never know, or was it Peter?
I get that, but dollars, I mean, change would mean more to people in that situation. It's a tangible thing that they can have on them that's got weight. I mean, that could be used for something. It's metal. Dollar bills are basically cloth and paper. Like at a certain point, like in Fallout, they have a little bit of worth in the Fallout universe. It's post-apocalyptic, but bottle caps mean more to people because
that's so funny.
Because it's a metal and because it can, it's actually it's a respected sign that this was the Nuka-Cola is a valued thing to them. So having a piece of the Nuka-Cola means more to them than these old dead presidents that nobody even remembers at that point.
Yeah, that is true. So I did kind of understand that, but yeah, everything else though, the perfumes, and I'm like, what are you doing? You should be getting clothing, shoes, definitely weapons. I don't know. I never saw them enter the
no, they didn't go inside the gun shop at all. But there's a reason for that because it was actually filmed in a location down the road. But anyways, wasn't actually in the mall, but that's movie magic for you. But yeah, the other thing is too, but they address it in the movie is the one guy picks up the TV and somebody points out, it's like, what the fuck do you have a use for a TV? And he's like, oh yeah. And he tosses it down and bashes it in, which part of me like cringed at that because that was a real TV that somebody busted up just for that movie. And I'm just like, that's so much waste. Like, I mean, I hated to be that way about it, but I'm just like, I don't have that same problem though when watching Zombieland whenever they all go into the like little Indian hut or whatever, like gift shop, and they bust a bunch of tchotchkes up because nobody eats that shit anyway.
Yeah.
It's like precious moments and all. Which, speaking of that, when I was talking about Biozombie, the zombie simp that for Rolls or whatever, whenever the four-eyed guy, whenever he becomes a zombie, he brings back a gift to Rolls, even though he's a zombie, and it's a Precious Moments like little figurine.
Oh my God.
And it breaks at one point, and that's whenever he goes in the zombie rage mode because it was his gift of love to her or whatever. But anyways,
just put me on the pasture. Have me look at the flowers.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that complaint by, other people who are big in the like horror movies that they absolutely hate this movie of George's, which is weird because most people think it's his best. I don't.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely not.
But the people who are down on it bring up the fact that when the pies come into effect, they say he went over the top with it, and I don't disagree.
I don't either. I want to wiki break down this story from my perspective. This is this is not my first time watching this film. I've seen this film. I have 100% seen the ending because I remember the song. I don't know why. Anyways, shit hit the fan real fast. You're in a station. This is the story you get. We know there's something going on. They're trying to cover it. They're trying to get it out there. People know they're in danger, especially not Peter, but Fran's man, Flyboy. Steven. Steven knew something was up, and he's like, meet me. We're not going to play this fucking game. You're going to meet me. This is what we're going to do. And now you have him, and then you see other people just trying to survive, group of survivors. And in this movie, much like any other zombie movie, you don't know what you're surviving from except for the fact that people are going mad or people are turning into creatures.
Yes.
And part of this story that is great that I think you and I can agree on because, again, we are discussing the story, is that they held up in a mall that had everything they needed, but I don't know for how long.
To me, in my mind, they held up there for months because, I mean, it given how long the montage kind of gives that feel to it at least.
Well, yeah, and then, of course, you see her belly literally grow.
Yeah.
Oh, they definitely did. I wonder how long they could have survived in that mall. And granted, it wasn't their fault, but it was kind of their fault because they were dicking around with the helicopter when they already didn't have fuel.
Yeah, she had to do that to be able to learn because that is smart, more than him needed in case he got bit, which he did. Needed to know how to fly. So that was smart. But at the same time, they waited so long to actually do that. That gave time for the professional army to show up and fuck them up, basically.
Yeah. So I think the story is a good story. Yes, it does get wonky a little bit, but I feel like the story, much like Day of the Dead, I feel, and we're not going to discuss Day right now, but I feel like it kind of makes sense in terms of zombies.
My favorite thing about it is the chaos it shows is like the middle of the apocalypse, like when not the very first day that it happens, but like as people are trying to deal with it and as the world falls apart, it does a very good representation of that. Like, I mean, you can say what you want to about George going back and showing like the TV, like characters watching TV, but that's natural. Like if you were like, you needed some kind of solace, you needed some kind of authority to come on TV and kind of, I mean, that's why it's also in the new one. I mean, when people freak out, they want somebody to tell them what's going on. And
they want to know what's going on, and more than anything, they want to hear something they already don't know already.
Yeah. So the fact that they would be gathered around a TV screen, I don't have a problem with because it makes sense, and it gives him a chance to expand the world and show you that shit's is fucked all over. I mean, I would say that the first part of the movie, whenever they're like breaking out and when they all the way up till they get to the mall, is perfect. The mall drags a bit in scenes after they've cleaned it up a little bit and they're just living the high life, as it were. You know, it drags a little bit during that part of it. Even more so, I would say because there's like 4 or 5 cuts of this movie. I would say that the director's cut drags that out even more, or not direct. Yeah, actually, it is director's cut. Drags it up even more. It's that part with the motorcycle gang. If they would have played that more like menacing, then the movie would have finished out perfect. But it's too comic booky at that point.
It was almost like, you know what it kind of reminded me of from Dusk Till Dawn when they started fucking up with the vampires. As soon as the vampires kind of like,
and considering that Tom was involved in both of them playing basically the same character, I think that was an homage. And at the same time, Tom was like, let's have some fun.
I think so too. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like there might have been a time and a place, but right towards the end, I don't know. Would there have been a better place for that? Because this was them kind of just fucking up their compound. They're like, fine, you're not going to let us in. You're not going to have a place that you need to stay holed up in anymore.
And that's actually really dark. And it would be even more impactful if they didn't have the fucking pie fights and the guy that's continuously getting on the blood pressure machine and,
yeah,
all that stuff.
With
and,
zombies literally on his ass.
Yeah, they're all around him, and he's still hopping in that. There's no way. I mean, it throws out all logic at that point. And the people who love the movie, think it's his best. They love that because of the goofiness, and like George said, the comic book part of it. It's just, I think he made such a damn good movie all the way up until that point that I could see why some people are totally against the movie now because it gets too goofy and kind of ruins everything. Yeah,
that's so funny.
The acting is pretty decent in this. I mean, for people who are not really named people, the four leads at least, especially Ken Foree. Like there was a reason he went on to become an actor. He really carries the weight of the acting, but Galen Ross does a pretty damn good job. I mean, playing like she projects that she's strong, but the scenes where it cuts to her and she's like by herself, especially after the guys have left her, she portrays that kind of vulnerability that the character would have.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Reiniger, he doesn't play it over the top whenever his character gets the PTSD, I can do anything bullshit. He plays it like somebody who's cracked up. And then the scene between him and Ken when he's getting ready to die, it still works to this day. And Flyboy, does decent all the way through them. I don't have a problem with any of the actors.
Yeah.
Except Tom. I know he's just in it for a goof, but he's just like an action hero toward the end of it. And it is what it is.
Yeah. I thought that the zombies were okay.
The zombie nurse was awful. She just was.
Well, yeah, there was some you could tell they had no direction, and I know they're just like, "Hey guys, you're zombies. You're just gonna walk around." But there was only like a small handful of zombies that really stood out. The kids obviously fucking checkered shirt or plaid shirt, if you will, and of course the I don't know what he was. You said Krishna.
The Hare Krishna zombie, yeah. That was kind of just like head cocked to the side, was just kind of like, slowly making his way up there to attack Fran,
Yeah, which was, I don't know. But anyways, yeah, that's the only thing is like, it's like they expected all these actors to know what to do, and they look like they didn't know what to do, so...
That's what you get whenever you just tell people, act like you think a zombie would act, because that's literally what George said he would do. And he has a point. He said, if I told everybody to just, do one specific thing like shuffle and moan, and I showed them how to do it, that's what they would do.
Yeah.
If I tell them creatively, what do you think this person would act like as a zombie, then you get different variations on that.
Yeah, that's true.
So he's got a point. At the same time, some people are not very creative, and you see that.
Yes, and that's what happens when you have hundreds of extras, Now, the extras in Dawn of the Dead 2004, which we will be getting to here soon, why did it look at some point like they were having a fucking EDM festival? Looked like they had a whole ass zombie rave outside.
Because a lot of them were CGI, and that's the computer making the effects.
The jumping up and down with their arms in the air, like, hey, 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 hey. I'm like, what the fuck? Somebody play some music to that, like,
Well, and then the one zombie later, which is, we're skipping ahead again, but the one zombie at the end of it that lifts up the propane tank, and he looks like he's straight out of a metal concert.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
just like, fuck you. And it's like, no, fuck you. And then blows up everything.
Yeah.
Music. I do like the music in this movie at times. The Goblin soundtrack is weird, but it fits the comic book feeling, even though that's the part I don't like so much. I do like, and the music that's in the mall fits, that they're in a mall.
That shit was funny. It didn't make it much less scary, honestly.
No, my favorite part is the gonk that plays at the end of it, though. That dun 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 dun.
I hate it.
It's just a perfect way to end the movie, because you see this whole mall ran over by zombies and that goofy music's playing. It just fits.
They're just doing their damn thing in the mall. That's what I remember the most. So, like I said, at some point I had seen a portion of this movie. I've probably seen this movie in bits and pieces prior, but once I was kind of really watching it, I was like, oh, I remember this. And then I heard that song and I was like, I know 100% I remember this. And why was I watching this? I feel like that would have terrified me, honestly.
It's funny because I had saw Night and I had saw Day, but I never saw Dawn. And I remember I went to it wasn't Sam Goody. It was Suncoast Video that they had in Lexington Mall.
Oh God, that you are dating us right now.
Well, it is what it is. And I bought the VHS version of it. That was like they had the director's cut on there, the extended cut.
Yeah.
And because I'd only read about this movie in books, like I had seen, they talk about like different scenes, and talked about the attack on the apartment. When you're reading about it, you're like, oh my God, I want to see this. And when I watched the movie, it blew me away because it did live up to what they were talking about. It's still, and maybe it's because I saw Day first, but it's one of those things where I saw what ended up being my favorite one before I saw this one. And so I'm just like, there's parts I like about it, but God. But yeah, the music in it is goofy, but it fits. But there is some actual, like the pulse pounding, like main theme of the movie. That's actually, it adds a terrifying feel to the beginning of the movie. It really does.
Yeah, when shit gets serious, the music does tone down a lot, especially when he's talking about when the dead walk the earth, or when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. The music gets real dark.
Well, it's actually because you play it in our intro, there's almost like a hollow wind sound that's blowing behind that. It's almost like the world is dead and like you're just hearing like moans or something. It's really spooky, actually. You want to get into some trivia? Let's get into some trivia. Because there's a lot for both movies.
Okay.
The extras who appeared in this film were reportedly given $1 in cash, a donut, and a Dawn of the Dead t-shirt as their payment.
Okay, because I would be an extra in a movie. For more than $1. I mean, how about you don't give me the t-shirt and whatever you were going to spend on that t-shirt, you just give me in cash instead.
You know how much those t-shirts probably fetched if you could prove that they were originally on the set, later on, if you proved that, or if you proved that they were directly from George as payment and you had some kind of way to backtrack that, or, they probably are worth enough to where they got compensated in the long run.
Hold on, I'm seeing if I can find anything. But you can move forward.
Tom Savini chose the gray color, as I said, because to match up with Night of the Living Dead's trying to get the black and white feel. He later said it was a mistake because they ended up looking quite blue on the film, and it's not so bad now with the color grading that they can do on the 4K and the Blu-ray. But on the VHS, they looked really blue. It was pretty bad.
Oh, yeah.
The zombie actors took photographs of themselves dressed up in full zombie makeup inside a photo booth on the second floor. They then replaced the sample pictures on the front of the booth with the ghoulish ones. That would have been pretty cool. If you went to the Monroeville Mall, the actual photo booth would have had pictures of zombies all over it. When Peter is attacked by the two zombie children at the hangar office, Ken Voorhees' reaction is actually authentic. He was not told that the zombie children would be attacking him, and he was legitimately shocked to see them.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that.
Also, those children, played by Melissa Savini Dunlap and Mike Savini, the real-life niece and nephew of Tom, are the only zombies in all of George Romero's Dead films that spontaneously run.
Yeah,
So-
they ran, and I was like, the fuck is happening here?
Zombie kids, they're actually scarier than zombie adults,
Yeah.
apparently. The MPAA had threatened to impose the X rating if George didn't make cuts. Romero didn't want to cut the film, and he was adamant against an X rating due to its stigma of being hardcore pornography. So in the end, he was able to persuade his distributors to release the film with no rating. Although in all advertising and trailers, there was a disclaimer that in effect read that while there was no explicit sex in the film, the movie was of such violent nature that no one under 17 would be admitted.
Yeah.
The funny thing about that is, and it's in the trivia for Dawn of the Dead 2004, they threatened him with all these cuts. You know how the gore looks in the remake, right?
Yeah.
They gave Zack Snyder an R for all that gore that's in the new one. And when Romero saw that, he's like, fuck yeah, now I can make Land of the Dead and I don't have to cut any fucking thing at all from that movie and still get an R rating. That just goes to show you how MPAA was like, I don't know. It's fucking jokes what it is. The voice of Christine Forrest, George Romero's wife, can be heard on pre-recorded announcement in the mall. Attention, all shoppers.
It's funny because I'm glad you said that because, I mean, that sounded like an old lady.
The funny thing about Chris Romero is that she on the recording, the whatever they call it, where they record over the movie, she's talking to, she's got George there and Tom, and she talked about how stupid she thought the pies were, and she was still adamant that George should have cut them. She also is beside him. That's him at the beginning of the movie whenever they're in like the booth or whatever. You see Fran in the second row, but George and Chris are both in the front row, and George is one of the guys calling the shots or whatever where they need to put the. So it's kind of neat seeing the two of them in the movie together. The scene between Roger and Peter in the trucks when they are kidding each other about their height was entirely improvised. Scott Reiniger is 5'7" or was. I don't know if he's still around. And then Ken Foree is 6'5", so there's a big size difference between the two actors. Galen Ross refused to scream during the film. Like I said, she wanted a strong female character and told George that if she screamed, that it would reduce the strength of the character. And once she told that to him, he never asked her to do it again. So there you go.
Which is fine. I still think like sometimes her silence was a little Barbara-y, if you will. And it's like, are you in shock, and does fucking Peter need to slap you?
Some of the zombies, notably the one in the tenement scene, were actual amputees. Like the guy laying on the floor that has like his foot eat off. He actually was missing a foot.
That's kind of cool.
That's Scott Reiniger's grandmother, despite his warnings, insisted on seeing the film at the theater. Reiniger accompanied her to the showing, and he said she made it through the part of the tenement scene, and then he asked her if she'd like to leave, and she said yes. So they did.
So funny.
Shooting at the mall was suspended over the Christmas season because it would have been too costly to nightly remove and then later rehang all of the seasonal decorations.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah.
Kathleen Feeney's lead zombie character, the nun zombie trapped in the door, was originally supposed to die, but Romero liked her and had her released from the door instead. That's a scene where Fran's like, the guys run out there to get the car, and like she's staying back, and then she has to like tug the door to let the nun zombie, get out. She was supposed to die, but Romero liked her, and I guess some Catholic guilt kicked in, and he didn't kill her. Many of the extras cast in the film, especially the zombies and close-up shots, were friends and relatives of the production crew.
Yeah, okay.
Makes sense. Some of the actors playing zombies in the movie would frequently get drunk at a late-night bar called the Brown Derby, which is in the Monroeville Mall, and then one night they stole a golf cart and crashed into a marble pillar, causing $7,000 worth of damage.
Oh, hell no.
Tom Savini used the same dummy throughout the course of the filming. During the time it was blown up, burnt, shot, and beaten, amongst other things.
I saw the dummy because Savini, I saw him like put a machete through her, I think.
He probably had fun doing all that stuff.
And chopping off the head, too.
Oh, yeah. The living quarters where the four heroes shacked up wasn't in the mall. It was a set built at George Romero's then production company, The Latent Image, located in Pittsburgh. The elevator shaft was also located there. So
okay.
That's a good use of stuff you already have.
Yeah.
The scene between Stephen, Peter, Roger, and Franny in the helicopter was filmed with a helicopter never running or leaving the ground. A shell was painted blue for the day scenes and black for the night scenes, and interspersed with real helicopter footage.
Oh, that's hella funny.
It looks like they're flying.
Yeah,
so, it
does.
It's a good effect. George Romero was initially hesitant to cast Scott Reiniger, despite the fact that he loved Reiniger's audition, as he'd already cast Ken Foree as Peter and was worried that the height disparity between the two actors would be an issue. Reiniger bluntly told Romero that after the first 15 minutes, no one in the audience would be paying one bit of attention to that whatsoever. And a short while later, Romero found Reiniger and told him that he got the part.
Yeah, he was right, because there was just way too much going on to even worry about the height difference.
Yeah, nobody cares. And they make a good pairing anyways. They work well together. Reiniger said his favorite moment in the film was the spontaneous idea to slide down the escalator. The part that made him most nervous was driving the VW Scirocco around the mall.
Oh, that's what that was. I thought that was a Ford Pinto.
It looks like it could have been. The funny thing about him, and it's on this somewhere, but and we'll get to it, and I'll skip over it when we get to it. When he slid down that, they actually changed how escalators were built so that they have a bump at the end of it, so people would not do that, because apparently a lot of people started doing that after this movie came out.
Oh, shit. It looks so fun, too.
The funny thing, too, I forgot about this. There's a scene in Biozombie where they slide down the escalator. It's got the bump at the end, and the guy hits his nuts on it.
Oh, shit.
So it was a good callback to the movie, I guess. With such a shoestring budget, the film couldn't afford professional stunt people outside of drivers, so Savini and his assistant, Taso Stravakis, volunteered for the task. They were responsible for almost every stunt scene in the film, although not all of them went perfectly. When filming a dive over the rail of the mall, Savini almost missed his pile of cardboard boxes with his legs and back landing on the ground.
Oh, shit.
He had to work from a golf cart for several days after that. The shot where Stavrakis swung down from a banner was poorly planned, and he wound up slamming into the ceiling.
Oh, shit.
Once he swung on the end of it. Actor Richard France, the deep-voiced eye patch-wearing scientist who is seen on the television in the film, is only credited as scientist in the end credits. However, he is referred to Dr. Millard Roche by the television interviewer, so for whatever reason, George was like, I gave him a name, but who fucking cares? He's a scientist.
Yeah.
The weapons store featured in the mall was never part of the Monroe Mill Mall. It was... he shot those scenes in a gun shop in downtown Pittsburgh and edited the footage in to make it look like it was part of it.
Yeah,
so,
that's kind of legit.
And that's the reason why in the remake they separated the two, because most malls don't have a gun shop.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, wow, was this a thing back in the 70s?
No, it wasn't even a thing back then. This was, again, the most profitable of the Dead series, mostly because Night they lost their ass on because of the copyright thing. I think Night would have been probably the one that gained the most money, but it's what it is.
The world may never know.
While writing the script for Night of the Living Dead, George Romero and John Russo contemplated how they would have the zombies destroyed. Co-star and makeup artist Marilyn Eastman was the one that joked that they should throw pies into their faces, and this is undoubtedly the basis for the pie fight scene. So blame Marilyn Eastman.
Jesus.
Blame the lady who was Harry Cooper's wife. He sure blamed her. Much of the fighting done by Fran was at the behest of Galen Ross, who refused to play a character who would not fight the zombies on her own. She doesn't do a lot in it, though. So George has progressively more proactive women in his movies. The one in Day has the most fight in her of the three. Of course, it's filmed in the Monroeville Mall, Pennsylvania. And there's actually, it might be in Mallrats. There is somebody who has, in one of the movies I remember seeing, has a hockey jersey that says Monroeville Mall Zombies or Monroeville Zombies on it. I want to say it's in Mallrats. I think that's what movie it's in. Okay. So kudos to Kevin Smith for that callback, if that's what I'm thinking is right. Galen Ross said that the brief scene where she is skating in the ice rink was a near disaster. She had stated on her resume that she could ice skate, but hadn't done that in 20 years. She admitted in an interview that she was being shouted instructions on how to skate by the rink manager, who was out of camera shot, and stayed on her feet barely long enough to make a single loop. According to Martin, Galen Ross told him that she had completely fabricated her resume when she auditioned, and that George had no idea how inexperienced she really was. And then George later said it wouldn't have mattered to me anyways. She didn't realize she didn't have to do that. So
God.
Him and Chris both said that, and George was a really humble guy. Like, he was one of the nicest people you could meet, and you could tell that. And it's funny hearing him that he's like, she didn't have to lie on her resume to play herself up. We liked her. And it's just kind of funny that she did.
Was that skating rink really in the mall?
It was.
That mall fucking has literally everything.
It's been replaced since then. I think it's probably in these notes somewhere, but I remember reading that they replaced it with maybe a food court or something, or something else. When Stephen idly uses the typewriter roughly 2/3 of the way through the movie, he types, "Now is the time." These are the first few words of an exercise widely used in touch typing classes when typewriters were first introduced in the workforce. The entire sentence reads, "Now is the first time for all good men to come to the aid of their country."
Oh, wow.
Kind of interesting, but I guess it's just, him practicing typing, and he was just using the code or the same thing they always used.
Yeah.
The working title was Dawn of the Living Dead, a logical name for the sequel given Night of the Living Dead. The reason they changed it to Dawn of the Dead was after making Night, George Romero and John A. Russo decided to go their separate ways and make their own sequels. While Romero wrote and directed Dawn, Russo made a movie called Return of the Living Dead, loosely based on his own sequel book with the same name. To set the two movies apart, Return and its sequel took the use of the Living Dead from the title, whereas Romero focused on the day, night, dawn stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes sense to me why he went the way he did. I don't know that, the Living Dead part of it made much of a difference. The dead is the main part, like blank of the dead.
Yeah.
They're even talking about now that there was an unreleased movie idea that he had, and they're thinking about trying to make it called Twilight of the Dead. That would be interesting if that came out.
How about High Noon of the Dead? What are we doing?
Well, Twilight, if it's at the end, like, past all the stuff, like if it's the very last thing.
I guess.
It took up the 3 hours in makeup for someone to become a zombie in this movie. I don't know why.
No, that's
embarrassing.
embarrassing.
They just had makeup on in a lot of cases.
You couldn't waterboard that information out of me.
Some of the cast were made physically sick by the makeup work.
Ew.
Peter is the second person to refer to the undead as zombies. The term is only used by a reporter on the radio once in Night of the Living Dead.
Okay.
Dawn of the Dead was intentionally more comedic than Night because Romero wanted it to be a comic book.
Okay.
And that's why it is. Savini chose his friend Jim Crut to play the helicopter zombie because he was notorious for having a low forehead. So the guy had a small forehead that they built way up to have the Frankenstein look, and then they just, took the top off. David Emge speculates that Scott Reininger's slide was the motivation for them putting the bumps at the bottom of the escalators. He referred to them as the Reininger bump when he saw them after that.
Oh, my God.
People still visit the shopping mall just to see where the film was made, and there's a lot of people that goes to Monroeville Mall just for that.
Hell, I'm going to Pennsylvania in October. I'm like, can I make a stop?
You should go there and the cemetery where they made Night of the Living
Dead.
Dead.
So good. Thank you.
George was introduced to Goblin, the Italian band who did the soundtrack for a number of horror films through Dario Argento. Since Argento had the right to change the music in Dawn for release in foreign markets, he had the band create a soundtrack for it. George mentions he had the option to use some or all of Goblin's score if he chose to, and he just chose to use it periodically throughout the movie. So
okay.
There is an Argento cut of the movie. I don't know if you would like that better. They cut out a lot of the goofiness from the movie, but they also which would be good, but they also cut out a lot of the pivotal scenes between the characters because Argento, being Italian, he's like, I like the blood, I like the guts, and it's like, well, that's fine, but there's more to this movie than that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've heard mixed things about the Argento cut that they released over in Italy. They called it Zombie over there, by the way. That's why all of the movies that Fulci made that were kind of like pseudo sequels were named like some kind of thing like that, like Zombie 2 or something to that effect, because they just took the name and made it Zombie, Zombi.
Yeah.
Romero described this as the balance point in the series where the number of humans is roughly the same as the number of zombies, at least through most of the movie, and then it kind of gets turned on its head at the end of the movie. In addition to the lead biker Blades, Tom Savini plays the zombie who breaks the window of the truck and is shot by Roger with a revolver. This scene leaves a bloody smear on the windshield. The effect was created by Savini throwing himself on the non-moving truck and spitting a mouthful of blood on the windshield.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
In order to save on production cost, Romero had all the 35 millimeter stock developed in the 16 millimeter and used that as his work reel. And then after choosing the scenes he wanted, and then he redeveloped it back in the 35. It seems like that's a lot of work, but hey, if that's the easiest way for him to edit it, then I guess that's what it is. But
yeah.
The idea for the film came to Romero whenever he was invited by his friend Mark Mason to a backstage tour of the Monroeville Mall. Mason noted to him that this would be the perfect place to hole up during an emergency, planting the seed with Romero for the next film.
Yeah.
It's like you're talking to the father of zombie movies, and you're like, hey, wouldn't this be a good place for an emergency? And he's like, fuck yeah, it would.
Hell yeah.
The beer that the hunters are seen drinking is Iron City Beer, a once popular beer brewed in Pittsburgh, and it was Romero's film company, The Late Image, that produced and filmed a number of their commercials in the late 60s and early 70s.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Of course, Joe Pilato, like I said, is in this movie, and also Captain Rhodes and Day. It is believed by many horror fans that the police officer is Captain Rhodes, with the backstory being that he was a Philadelphia policeman and an Army reservist. And then Day, he's with the military, and the world's fucking over. So
okay, isn't Captain Rhodes? Am I wrong? Is Captain Rhodes dead in Day?
Not till the very end of the movie,
okay.
Whenever he's yelling "choke on him,"
okay,
which is
that's
the most
him. Never mind.
badass thing that you can fucking say as you're getting torn apart.
Literally ripped apart from the insides out.
God, and this is way ahead, and I'll bring it back up again. The guts that they had that they were ripping apart from him in that scene when Captain Rhodes is getting torn apart they were real pig intestines that had been left out for a day out of refrigeration, and they stunk like fucking hell. So he was having to, that right in his face, he was having to act with that rotting stench all over him.
Yeah.
The head explosion shot was important in American horror films, and now horror films before that time didn't show that kind of violence. And Savini agrees, saying that, basically, if they're going to show that to us at the beginning of the movie, what have they got in store for the end?
I love it.
George notes his collaboration with Argento and Italian financiers was a good partnership. He was left alone to make the movie he wanted to make, and then Argento could cut the film any way he wanted to for foreign markets. And again, like I said, Argento didn't like the humor, so his version trimmed many of the jokes. But that also caused the foreign markets to crash down hard on the film. And George joked that there's roughly 10 different cuts of the film because of all the different variances that they did. There's the director's cut. There's the extended director's cut. There's the theatrical. There's the Argento. I want to say that there's one more that I'm not even thinking of right now that like cuts in some other stuff from the TV version. It's ridiculous how many there is. According to Romero in the voiceover narrative, the whole scene of Fran wearing makeup and posing with a revolver was something of an improv from Galen Ross and almost was cut out of the film, but he decided to leave it in at the last minute because it showed how the survivors were starting to crack up, even though they had everything they could possibly want in the mall, period.
Yeah.
Much of the stock music used in this film was licensed from the Music DeWolf Library, a much used resource of stock music for motion pictures. So again, George went and got cheap music to intercut between the Goblin music, which I don't really blame him. I mean, and it's that stock music that you talked about that actually makes the the some of the darker scenes in the movie, I think.
Yeah.
When Savini signed on the film, he didn't know he'd be appearing or performing actual stunts. He said, it's like the stuff needed to be done. And I think I said, I can do that. I can fall off the balcony. The way that Chris Romero remembered it was that Savini kept hounding George to let him do the stunt. She went on to remark that everything that Savini wanted to do, that if they did everything that Savini wanted to do as far as a stunt, they would have still been shooting. Because Savini mentions that much of the fun of the production that he could bring up new ideas every day and try to sort out how to do it. That fall off the balcony, though, Savini injured himself, and again, those cardboard boxes didn't dampen his fall too much. So
he tried to get cheap with it.
Yeah, he tried to do too much. When asked about the film, Savini stated, when you're born in Pittsburgh, one of the things you wanted to be when you grew up was a zombie in a Romero film. And I can't argue that.
I want to be a zombie in a Romero film, and I will never have that opportunity.
No, unfortunately. The scene where they knock in the door and they blow the one zombie's head off, if that actual zombie, that head that they used for that was actually Galen Ross's fake head that they were going to use at the end of the movie, there was an alternate ending where she commits suicide because Peter kills himself. She hears the gunshot. She decides there's no reason for her to try to make it out of there. So she stands up and the blades of the helicopter cut her head off, basically. And then Savini was like, since they decided against that ending, Savini was like, well, I've already got the head made. So he just gave it a African-American a makeover, filled it with a bunch of food, and shot it with an actual shotgun and blew the shit out of it.
Yeah.
So there you go. Romero notes that there are a dozen or so shots, most of them establishing shots, where he wishes that he had more zombies walking around the mall. Savini pointed out that CGI would have allowed them to have about 3,000 in any given shot, but back then they didn't have access to anything like that, and George preferred practical effects whenever he could use them anyways, which is smarter, because when he did switch to more CGI effects for Diary of the Dead, it looked bad. Like the blood effects were really bad.
Yeah.
The biker invasion was shot over 2 nights. It took them because of the setups and everything they had to do. I can't imagine having to reset that mall after that first night of like knocking everything over. And until his death, George didn't use storyboards. He worked from shot list, as he did with Dawn of the Dead. He mentioned directing Bruiser and how that film required much more choreography with the shots. Where he was working with 30-day shoot there, he used a lot more long takes and camera movement, whereas in Dawn, it was a lot of static shots cut quickly. He notes that a bigger budget means bigger limitations on the film. Because of the budget and available technology at the time, the production wasn't able to see dailies to ensure they actually got the shot they wanted. They actually had to ship it to New York and get it processed in a lab. And then the lab would call George to let him know if that everything looked okay. If it didn't, then they had to go in and do reshoots. That would have been annoying.
Yeah.
Basically, they had to shoot it, send it off. Hey, is everything okay? Well, everything's fine, except this one scene looks like shit. And then they had to go in and refilm it.
Yeah.
The owner of the restaurant where actor David Emge was working introduced Emge to George, who was casting at the time. Emge says Romero told him that if he could fit into the coat that they had for Flyboy, he would get the part. Emge jokingly said that any other actor was far too big to wear the coat, so he got the job because of that.
Oh, my God.
Savini has gone on record complaining that the blood in the film looks like melted crayons. During the raid on the tenement building early in the film, a zombie escapes from one of the apartments and is embraced by his wife, who immediately attacks. When the actor bites the actress's arm to tear away the blood pack effect, he accidentally bit over the pack, causing a minor but painful injury, and the scream that she lets out was partially authentic.
Did he break skin?
Sounds like he did.
Ew.
Financing had ground to a halt when Dario Argento got word of the project. Argento was a huge fan of Night and was able to secure international rights for the sequel, guaranteeing its budget. So if it hadn't been for Argento, this movie would have never been made.
Yeah.
The bike gang in the third act of the film was actually a real gang called the Pagans, or at least most of them were. Savini notes his character wasn't written in the script, but he and George came up with a character on set. and all of the characters' dialogue is improvised, which I mean is what it is. And Chris and that's I already mentioned that about if the survivors of this and Day would fight each other. War is hell until it turns into a party, said Romero when asked about when he was aiming at the mob with soldiers and citizens hunting zombies for sport. The director mentions this sequence in Dawn is carried over from Night, and he said, "Don't you think this would be going on if this phenomenon was really happening?" He says, "You can only hunt so many deer." I think he's got a good point. Like if the zombie apocalypse broke out, there would be some people like having a party out of it, getting to just shoot their neighbors.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah, rednecks. I'm just kidding.
Oh, by the way, I was going to ask you this. This is headcanon for me, but there's a scene toward the end of Night where you can see the helicopter flying over as the rednecks are going to clean up the house or whatever. I totally feel like that whenever they fly over in this movie, that they're seeing the effects from the Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, that's immediately what I thought of.
The helicopter blades in the shot where the zombie chops the top of his own head off was animated in post. Obviously, they didn't have a real blades going on with the actor standing up like that. To achieve the bullet ricochets off the side of the elevator shaft wall when the bikers are shooting at Steven. Savini shot rocks with a slingshot at the wall next to Emge. The actual hit on his arm utilized the blood-filled prophylactic. Let's see. All three, Romero, Savini, and Forrest, agree how awesome the sound was when all the bikes were driving around inside the mall. George notes that it was the first time he'd experienced writing something and then being totally blown away by the reality of it. He said there was no way to capture that feeling on film. He also mentions the roar and vibration of the bike set off every alarm in the mall that night.
Oh, my God.
The novel reveals the surnames of the characters. Peter's name is Washington, Rogers is DeMarco, Francine's is Parker, and Dr. Foster's first name is James, and Berman's is Sydney. So there you go.
Wow.
Because the majority of the movie was filmed inside of a live retail mall between hours of closing and opening, the production company was completely liable for any and all costs associated with damages and theft. Production of this size, casting well over 100 extras in addition to cast and crew, had financially accounted for the possibility of some such occurrences. While there were incidences of theft reported, the actual extent of verifiable thefts was not and likely would never be known due to the fact that inventory systems at that time were nowhere near as good as they are now.
Yeah, because I was wondering, because obviously we see looting in this movie, and that was staged, of course, but I'm like, they were in an actual mall. You could tell that they were doing their best not to fucking touch anything in that mall. So
yeah.
Was there? I mean, clearly there was looting going on or actual theft.
Yeah, there was people stealing stuff. Just how much stuff is the question, and nobody will never know. John Amplis, the casting director for this film, was also the star in Romero's film Martin from '77. When given a cameo in the film as the leader of the housing insurgency, they named the character Martinez to call back to the fact his character was Martin in the previous movie. The M16 rifles used by the SWAT team were copies made by Army Jagger, known as the AP-74. They were designed to fire 22 long rifle cartridges. In the HUD at the helicopter refueling site, Ken Forhey can be seen reloading 22 blanks instead of the larger 223s or 5.56s that would have actually been in the M16.
Yeah.
The alternative rock band My Chemical Romance wrote a song based on the movie called Early Sunsets over Monroeville for their first album, I Brought You My Bullets, You Brought Me Your Love. They decided to write this song because the movie is a favorite of singer Gerard Way and his brother, bassist Mikey Way. Mikey is often seen wearing a Dawn of the Dead shirt.
Oh, my God.
Playing, so.
I love that band.
Galen Ross's debut in this film, of course, she lied to get the part, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Beanie had a crew of 8 people who had to apply makeup to 200. That's probably why it took so long for the makeup effects, because they were having to apply it to that many people, and there was only 8 of them.
I thought they said 3, but okay, it's 3 hours, but it was not per person. It was 3 hours in total for 300 people.
Probably,
That
yes.
makes more sense because that's what it looked like.
The policemen, firemen, and Army National Guard featured in the film as they're flying over Johnstown are actual members of their respective branches. They put a call out to all the local fire and police stations, as well as the local National Guard, for voluntary participation in the film. And the production crew were surprised to see a large number of servicemen that turned out for the shoot.
Hell yeah.
Especially the National Guard, which sent dozens of men, trucks, and jeeps.
Wow,
for the movie.
yeah.
Much of the footage shot during this film was entirely candid, as the servicemen were very happy to pose for pictures and mingle with the cast and crew.
Dude, that would be badass. I would love that. I don't think you can get away with that today, but
No.
yeah, back then, oh man, never an opportunity like that again.
The calendar that Fran crosses out has dates upon it from December 1976. So if you go by the logic in the movie, this movie takes place on the Sunday. This assumes a Sunday through Monday format. It only includes November, December, January, February, and takes 76, 77, and 78 calendars into consideration. So they basically, somebody did their sleuthing and came up with the fact this movie takes place in December of 76, if you want to date it to a certain time period.
Jesus.
It was filmed over the period of 4 months. The cop that gets shot on the roof near the beginning of Dawn was Savini's first ever headshot. The film originally had a crew member on charge of squibs, but he left halfway through shooting, so Savini had to just learn how to do squibs on the fly, basically. He did a pretty good job because there's squibs all through the movie.
Yeah.
The skating rink is no longer there. It was replaced by a food court. That's what I thought. Again, Peter was supposed to kill himself, and then Fran was committed suicide by sticking her head in the blades.
Ew.
Romero had fallen in love with the characters, however, and over the course of the movie, and after all the horrors they ended up enduring, he was just like, fuck it. They get a semi-happy ending, you know?
I mean, you can tell that Peter was contemplating it, and then he's like, just kidding, I want to live, you know?
Yeah, for a second there, he had that little Derringer looking pistol aimed at his head, and then he just decided, fuck it, I'm going to fight and get out of here. Let's see. Director Romero has said several times that David Emge's Zombie Walk is his favorite of all the Dead movies for good reason.
Yeah.
And he's gone on to say that it's a performance worthy of Lon Chaney, which I would technically agree with because it's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Real cow intestines were used in the scene where Sledge, Tasso Bacchus, gets his guts ripped out. Savini said that he lived near a slaughterhouse, and that's how he got the idea to do the effect. In the movie, the body count ends up being 93. There's 17 humans that die and 76 zombies.
Zombies don't count. They were already dead. They're not real.
This movie's a classic. I mean, there's not much you could say about it. Like I said, it's a love it or hate it type movie because of the goofy comedy in it.
Yeah.
But it established Romero. I mean, not got his name out there, but this movie was, after this, everybody was like, Romero's the zombie guy. Like, he's clearly the guy that does this, you know?
Yeah.
And he inspired so many other people to make movies based upon this movie that you can't take that away from it. Regardless if you hate the movie, if you or whatever, the fact that this independent movie went on to inspire so many other would-be directors is, I mean, it says a lot.
Yeah.
What would you give this out of Rotten Corpses scale?
I would say a 3.5 is what it gets from me.
Same.
Okay.
That's what I would go with. Yes.
I mean, it was good. It had its goofy moments. The makeup was fucking terrible, but for its time, everything else was pretty decent. And you still get that fear that you need to have with a zombie movie.
Yeah, some of the scenes in the movie, like especially where Steven's like, inside of that, wherever, when he gets the book that talks about like the elevator shaft and all that, and there's that one zombie that's stalking him throughout the entire thing, and he can't fucking shoot anything. That's actually pretty creepy at times.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so yeah, 3.5 from me. I mean, if you love the movie more than that, great. I understand where you're coming from, and if you hate it, I get it for the comedy that's in it. But for me, I can watch this movie at any time. It's one of those type movies.
Yeah, it's definitely enjoyable. If it's on TV, I'm going to watch it. It's not something I'm just going to randomly put on like, oh, you know what I haven't seen in a while. But it's definitely one of those, if it's on, yeah, I'm going to give it a watch.
Yeah. Unlike its remake, which I would definitely seek out and watch just to watch.
It's a comfort film for us at this point, even though it's not very comforting for me.
All right, folks. With that, peace be with you.
And with your spirit.